Good afternoon, everyone. This is George Mallett and Greg Cooke on the inaugural BBTV podcast. How are we doing, Greg?
I'm all good, thanks, George. How are you? Excited, mate? I'll be honest, very excited. Inaugural podcast. We said we'd get it going, and fair play to you, mate. You've sorted it out. Yeah, looking forward to it, mate.
Yeah, you were saying just before we got on about how you felt you were about to go in for 12 rounds of boxing.
Oh yeah, this is it. I'm hoping there's someone in my corner or something, like, proper. Bit nervous, but it's quality, mate, to be fair, because like I say, we started writing for BBTV, didn't we, at the same time, and it's nice, really, like Chris and Aki have, been good to us and given us, like, a bit of an opportunity to do things ourselves, and I think it'd be nice. Yeah, I think it'd be good.
I think probably what we want to do a little bit is, well, we're just going to chat a bit about boxing, aren't we, generally, but it's British Boxing TV. We like to look out for young, up-and-coming British fighters, shine the spotlight on them a little bit. So probably a good place to start with our sort of weekend roundup from last weekend. I know that I was at the Avanesian Taylor fight. I know, Greg, you watched it on TV. So what were your sort of first impressions of the first sort of Sky Sports boxer card?
Well, like you say, it's good, really, because we've both got two different perspectives from the first. I say it's the first fight. Sky have been doing shows for years, haven't we? But a different promotional partnership, and yeah, I mean, it had the similarities. So obviously, you've got Anna Woolhouse presenting. You've got Adam Smith and Matt Macklin on comms. Andy Clark, I think Andy Clark's brilliant, with his separate commentary and how he does his scorecards. And yeah, I thought the fights were good. Ebony Jones, she looked really, really good. In a first fight, and yeah, the fights themselves were good, and the production of it. I think the heat map that they were trying, I think that got mixed reviews on Twitter, let's say, which is something that really didn't bother me. But yeah, to start off with, Avanesian headlining the card. I think, just before I talk about Avanesian and that, I think Chris Eubank Jr. not being on the card, obviously, it's going to, he's quite a big name, isn't he? To start their first show, it'd have been great to see him on there, but obviously they had a change of opponent, and then it was cancelled Saturday morning. So that's going to be a disappointment. But the show itself ran pretty well, and it looks as though they've got a lot more coming up with the show in Newcastle. Then they announced, I think Riakporhe is going to be in a world title eliminator. I know Florian Marku is going to be on the card. Dan Aziz versus Jose Burton. So they've got good fights coming up. But yeah, for a first one, yeah, it was an all right night of boxing. Chilled out and watched it, and yeah, I think for a first, it's always going to be different, isn't it? The first show that we do, but as first shows go with new promotional outfits, I thought it ran pretty smoothly. Yeah,
I mean, to be honest, I think they were kind of thrown. I mean, with the Eubank fight being off, a lot of dropouts. They had to replace a lot of the card. They got shanked every way possible, and they kind of pulled off, I'd say, a pretty decent night of boxing in the end. So the one thing I would say about Boxer is that I think as Sky Sports fans, we've kind of got used to Matchroom, and sort of that massive stable of fighters means that we're always going to have good matchups. Obviously, that's good for a boxing fan. It's not great if you're an actual boxer yourself, because you're going to be having tricky fights all the time. But I think there is some opportunity there for maybe a bit more flexibility that they maybe didn't have in Matchroom, where they can probably get a slightly different angle of fighter, I reckon, potentially.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, it's also new, isn't it? That's the first part. And I remember when you obviously had Hughie Fury, Savannah Marshall, Richard Riakporhe, and Lewis Ritson. They were the four big names that were first announced. I remember looking at that thinking, will it work for them? But they're going to be going from third and fourth, Hughie Fury and Savannah Marshall, Riakporhe. They were second, third on an undercard. They're going to be headlining their own shows. So I think the appeal will be for fighters who want to be headlining their own show. I think that'll be one. I think the announcement of Jose Burton, I think Jose Burton is still a game light heavyweight, in Britain for sure. I think that's a really good fight. And it's just giving them that opportunity. And I think the more that they see, what they're going to have to do is, how are the shows progressing and are they reaching the numbers? And that's what's going to turn other fighters. But then again, like you say, you've got Clarissa Shields. I know she's signed up in some way or another with Sky moving forward. So, yeah, it's early days, isn't it? But like you say, if it's a success and they keep the fights coming and they're regular and the fighters know where they stand. I mean, Richard Riakpo, he fought on Saturday. He's out again, what, in that 8 weeks, if that, 7 or 8 weeks? No, I think it's less than that. I think it's November, isn't it? So what, 4 or 5 weeks? So it's going to be continuous for them, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's going to be a pretty interesting next few months. I think. I'm a real big fan of their tournaments that they've got going on. They'll be coming up, I think, in Newcastle and Manchester, and they look like they're assembling a decent crop. So definitely look out for them. But sort of going back to Riakpo, did you watch the fight, Greg?
I did, and in all honesty, I was absolutely livid with myself, to be honest, because I was going to have Riakpo to win on points, just for the fact he'd not fought for so long. I knew he'd get the win, but how he'd do it. And then I was going to have Avanesian to win in rounds 1 to 6. From a tenner, I'd have got like 60 quid back. I didn't bother. I thought, something will happen. But yeah, I really like Richard Riakpo, and he has kind of gone under the radar a little bit. I mean, his victories domestically against Tommy McCarthy, against Chris Smith, was it Sam Hyde as well?
Jack Massey as well. Yeah.
Jack Massey as well. They're good names, and I think he's going to be quite high up. I think with I know he's going to go fight for the WBC rankings, but I was always had it in my head that he was with the WBA. So I thought he'd be hoping to fight Bulmarian. The fight I'd have loved to have seen would have been an all British clash between Lawrence Okoli and Riakpo. That would have been, in London. Yeah. That would have been for 2 world titles unification. But yeah, I think he's effective. Strong, big lad. And then victories that he's had domestically, I don't think you could look at them as if they were a fluke or anything. He's well within his right to be where he is. And don't get me wrong, if he goes in against Makabu, it's like people talking about Lawrence Okoli fighting Bradis, Riakpo fighting Makabu. That's stepping up from world level to elite level straight away. Makabu and Bradis for me are the 2 best cruiserweights on the planet. Yeah, and I think if he'd have gone down that WBA route, I think Bulmarian with the WBA is a bit of an unknown. So you'd think, well, maybe go for that fight, but I think Okoli will get that unification. Be a good fight, but it depends how long it lasts. And I still think Makabu's got a lot to offer. And I do think that would be a really tough fight for Richard Riakpo, but it depends how he goes about that fight. If could he beat Makabu? It's a tough fight for him. I think anyway.
I can't see that yet. But then again, I'm coming off the back of seeing him on Saturday night, and that's obviously what we're talking. December 2019, I think, was the last time that he was out. It's safe to say he was pretty ring rusty on Saturday night, but he never looked like not getting the job done. So we can't really ever judge him from a performance like that. But it'll be interesting to see what he does against Diderola, or can't remember what it is.
Yeah, for the W, I think it's a final eliminator, isn't it? So I suppose you'll be right. I've kind of got it in my head that he'll fight that fight and then he'll go straight in with Makabu. He might fight that fight, become mandatory, or have another year fighting a couple of other fighters. But yeah, I think he's exciting. And like I said, I'd love to have seen Okoli Riakpo, in a unification. I think that'd have been exciting. But yeah, I really do like Riakpo. And I think domestically, and I know Ben Shalom on Saturday, he said exactly that. He's done everything there is domestically. He's past that now. And that is where he should be at. And he's teetering on that world level now, I think. And I think Okoli took that step when he fought, all them saying he fought Chamberlain, he fought Eugene Garbu for the European title. You show yourself that you've done that step and then you move up again, don't you?
Chamberlain Riakpo is a fight I could see quite soon, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's a fight that Riakpo I think he probably would win, but I think that would be a massive opportunity for Chamberlain if that did come along. But then again, is that a fight which is really in that much interest for Riakpo? Probably not.
I think you're right, man. I think it'd be a really good fight. Domestic fights are always, especially when they're in and around similar levels a little bit. I think Chamberlain, I think he'd be knocking on the door maybe of that, British, Commonwealth, European level. I think Riakporhe will be looking on. So I think they're probably going to be looking at that the exact same. I think Chamberlain will look at that and go, I need to go through that level of the European title. And Riakporhe will be looking at that going, and beyond that. So it's dangerous for the pair of them. If one of them gets beat, it's not the fear that they lose that fight. I think they both think they could win, but it's the fear of the potential of losing. What happens next?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I don't think that's something that Riakporhe ever really. He's never ever worried about that, has he? I mean, if there's one fighter on the planet you think that would take the Maccabi fight, that would take basically anything, it's probably Richard Riakporhe, and I think that's to his credit, really. But yeah, talking of that, really, one man who I don't think anyone on the planet in the welterweight division would probably want to fight right now is David Avanasian. What do you make of that performance on Saturday?
Just ferocious, and you know, he hits so hard, it's frightening. I remember I was really looking forward to the Kelly Avanasian fight because it had been stop-start. It was meant to happen, 3 fights down. It finally happened. And there was always that concern that he can hit really hard. But the way he beat Josh Kelly, who really was one of our big hopes for becoming a world champion, with his Olympic experience and amateur experience, and the way Avanasian kind of dealt with his onslaught and then took him out, he just hit so hard for a welterweight. And I think he causes problems, and his record doesn't do him justice. He's obviously got 3 defeats. His record doesn't do him justice. He hits that hard. He's a problem. He's genuinely, apart from the big like Spence, Crawford, I think he'd have a good fight with Ugas. I think a lot of them are just going to say, no, we're on our path. We'll win along. And yeah, it's whether he can get the big fights. That's the big one, really.
Yeah, I mean, the one way I do feel a bit sorry for him is I don't think anyone in sort of higher ranked, you're not going to get a Sean Porter taking that fight on. The only way that Avanasian gets, and he will, I think he will get a second world title shot. And he obviously lost last time out against Lamont Peterson, but he will get that shot. But it's going to be one of those ones that it's going to be a Dillian Whyte situation where it kind of eventually comes along. But and because it's not a fight that I think if a Porter Avanasian, as much as like Avanasian's a great fighter, and it would be a proper scrap, we'd all watch it. I'm not sure it sells quite as well or enough to get Porter interested.
Yeah, I think, in all honesty, I think obviously with Sean Porter and Crawford now being fully announced for is it November? Yeah, that's been announced for, isn't it? I mean, that's a fight I'm really looking forward to, Crawford and Porter. But if Crawford wins that fight, then you might be looking at Porter then, and he'd be thinking, well, I haven't really got. He might be looking at it then, thinking, well, I'll get a payday, and he might fight the likes of Avanasian. He might fight the likes of Conor Benn, because when you get to that point in your career, I think Crawford Porter's a great fight, and it'll show us what level Crawford's at welterweight. He's fought Horn, Amir Khan, Brook, and he had another fight in between. I think he's had 4 fights at welterweight. So this is a real good test for Crawford. I think he wins, but if Porter loses that fight, he's got 1 or 2 options, hasn't he? He'll sit there and say, I'm going to retire, or let me see what they're offering, what they're going to pay. I think Conor Benn and Porter would be a great fight. Then Broner, you throw Adrian Broner in the mix as well,
Yeah. What about Ben Avanasian? It would sell in the UK, I think. Big time.
That would be a big fight. That would do well at the O2. I think that would sell the O2. But Conor Benn's got such appeal. I think it's the way he fights, he's ferocious, the way he talks as well. He talks so well. But again, I think Carl Greaves did an interview and he said, we're not really interested in the Conor Benn fight. I think Conor Benn's come out and potentially done the same. I think Conor Benn's trajectory will be work your way up the WBA rankings, get as close as you can, become mandatory for Ugas. And I think Ben Ugas is a good fight. When he gets that world title, if he gets that world title, then they might look at Avanasian. I think they really want to get Conor Benn into that world title position without as many speed bumps as possible. And when he's got that world title, that is when, we'll fight Avanasian, we'll fight Porter, we'll fight Broner. Then they'll just want to get there as well as they can.
You think Ben would win a world title?
I think if he goes down the WBA route, I think Conor Benn has a really good fight with Yordenis Ugas. I think that's a good fight. I think Conor Benn now, I don't know when it'll be. I think he's quite high with the W. I think he's 8th or 7th. And I think if you keep winning, you are going to work your way up. So I think if he fights Ugas, yeah. I think if he fought Spence or Crawford now, or even in a year's time, 18 months, no. But if he's going to win a world title, his best opportunity, I believe, is against Ugas. And in 18 months' time, that's a really good fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I did write on this the other day. Can't remember where Avanesian is ranked. I've got a feeling it might be somewhere in the way of Conor Benn up one of those ladders, though.
I think that they might be similar. I think it'd be interesting to see. I think because Conor Benn, when you get like the Intercontinental or international title, a lot of fans, I've been one of them at the time, where you think, well, what does that title actually do? What does it do for you as a fighter? But that is exactly what it does. It elevates you a bit higher up, doesn't it? But just looking at, I've got it up now. So in the WBA rankings, according to Jamal James's regular, Ugas's super, I think then Conor Benn's 10th.
Yeah.
So I think Avanesian might be about.
It's WBO and WBC, which is Avanesian. I think he's 6th in the WBO, and
7th in the WBC.
I think Michael McKinson's 4th in the WBO. So that might be. I mean, it's not a massive fight, but
still a good fight though. McKinson, styles make fights, don't they?
Yeah, could be an eliminator potentially, depending on what happens with Crawford Porter.
Yeah, I think a fight that you will see in a not too distant future will be McKinson against one of them. I think McKinson's game. I think he will fight. Because when you get into a position like McKinson did, he's going to be looking at this thinking, "I've landed on my feet. This is fantastic. I'm going to be making good money." They don't mind taking them fights, and he'll have that mentality. I've got nothing to lose. It obviously he's got the record to lose, but I think he's a good fighter. He can win these fights. He's going to be fearless. So I think McKinson might be somebody who Conor Benn fights. He might fight Avanesian. I think they make for good viewing. I really do.
Yeah. If I was McKinson, I'd probably prefer to fight Conor Benn, to be honest. But that's probably not going to be an option that he gets. I think if he fights one of them, it will be Avanesian, personally, just because of the rankings. But I mean, both of them are going for world titles, aren't they? And obviously, fighting Ben would do a bit for that in the WBA. But I mean, it's a big risk with not much reward for McKinson. Whereas Avanesian might just be something that he kind of doesn't have the choice. But then again, if he wins it, it's a massive step up in the WBO, and that's probably a world title mandatory position. So you can't really argue with that, can you?
Absolutely. And I think as well, it was the WBO global title he won, wasn't it? I think McKinson. And that's obviously going to be similar, I think, to the WBA Intercontinental or IBF International. But yeah, I think the thing is, if he gets into a mandatory position for Crawford, obviously Crawford's fighting Porter, if he maintains that belt, it's a massive fight. You get into any mandatory position in the welterweight division, whether McKinson goes over to America and fights Crawford, you've landed on your feet again. He's done so well. So yeah, it's quite exciting for McKinson, to be fair, in the welterweight division. And I think if he gets that mandatory shot, then you've got to sit there and say he's earned it. Really, really earned it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, we won't dwell on it, but I'd like to see Chris Congo come again. But yeah, he seems, judging on what I've seen on social media, he's not having the best of times at the moment. But seems to be, yeah, I'd like to see him back. And then I think if McKinson goes on in the WBO, then that loss might look better in time. But yeah, I suppose that's we've kind of touched on the Avanesian Taylor, obviously Richie Riakporhe return. I'd just like to mention a couple of others that I saw on the card. Linus Adofia looked really, really good in his win against Yulko. I'm pronouncing that wrong. You'll have got the correct pronunciation on TV. Or Yulko Vrinozi, I think he was, the Albanian. Looked very good. I think he's mandatory for the Felix Cash British title fight now, and that is, I'm not sure that's a fight he wins, to be honest, but I think that would be a good fight. And then I think another one which is definitely worth looking out for on that card. Well, there are plenty worth looking out for, but Razor Ali, mate, that guy has the most nut story you will ever hear in your life. I did a piece for British Boxers the other day, but I'll sum it up very quickly. I mean, you could write a 700-page book on it if you wanted, but age 2, parents divorce, father's a heroin addict. Age 6, he's moved in with his grandparents at this point. They're in a car with 8 family members. Well, there are 8 family members in the car. 7 of them die, except for Razor Ali. Razor Ali's the only guy who survives, burns all over his face. He's in hospital for ages. He then goes back to live with his mum. He gets kidnapped by his dad, who's still off his face on heroin. His dad tries to sell him, so like human trafficking, and then the buyer pulls out. He gets left on the streets in Tehran, so he's from Iran. Takes up kickboxing once he's sort of found his way back to his mum. Goes to fight in China against the world kickboxing champion when he's 16. He doesn't know. He gets on a plane and just and he's given a ticket and some money and a bag, and then he's picked up at the airport, taken to this massive stadium, sees a massive crowd, TV cameras. He's like, what is this? He's a 16-year-old boy from Iran. And yeah, gets in the ring. Turns out he's fighting the Chinese 26-year-old kickboxing champion. Goes back to Iran, decides, like, I mean, some of the stuff that he's experienced there, like, living in the UK, we just never, ever, I don't think we just never, ever experienced that. But anyway, he comes to the UK age 18, living on the streets in East London, and then eventually finds Repton ABC, and then the rest is history. There's a lot in between, but mate, keep a lookout for Razor Ali, because if he does anything in boxing, there is going to be one of the best biopics you've ever seen. But yeah, I think he fights at super bantam, I think. So worth keeping an eye on, definitely.
Mate, what story that sounds? That's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd love to have a chat with him. You'll see him on a few interviews, but he's a fascinating bloke, and he's, when people say, "Oh, thank you, Wasserman, for the opportunity," watching him in the press conference, you could believe every word he says. And then just to finish on that, he also said he spars with a lot of people, and occasionally someone will say, "Oh, give him an excuse," and he'll just go, "You're giving me an excuse," like, after, because a lot of them obviously don't know the backstory of Razor Ali. But yeah, definitely an eye to watch. And talking of ones to watch, we've got a pretty good one this weekend with Smith Fowler, don't we? What do you think of that card?
I think in probably one of the best fight cards. You know, I always kind of say a regular Saturday fight night that Eddie Hearn used to do. Obviously now it's going to be your regular shows moving forward with the Zone. One of the best he's done for a long, long time. And he said it's one of the best ones he's done ever in Liverpool. And I totally agree. The main event is so interesting because you've got Anthony Fowler, who needs that big fight. And credit to Anthony Fowler, he has his critics, but credit to him. After the Fitzgerald defeat, he's done everything right. He's beat everybody who's been put in front of him. He's linked up with Shane McGuigan. And I think he's on I think a lot of people may be looking at this. You know, you've got Smith, who's, you know, gone through it the hard way, come back after the Fitzgerald fight. Got Liam Smith, who had the defeat in Russia, which a lot of people thought he won. So they are both at a bit of a crossroads moment in the career. Has Liam Smith still got it? Has Anthony Fowler got what it takes to go up to that level? I do think the winner will fight somebody like Jesse Vargas. But that main event was so interesting. And the general consensus that I buy into is Liam Smith will get through the first 6 rounds knowing it's going to be tough. And I think Liam Smith will then use his experience to win the final 6 rounds, whether it's by stoppage or just roughing him up. A brilliant main event. But the undercard itself, a light middle, my favourite division, to be fair, light middleweight, domestically, you know, in the world as well, with Charlo fighting Castano. Whenever you see an undisputed fight in the division, it's exciting. Ted Cheeseman, really, people talk about throwback fighters. Ted Cheeseman fights absolutely anyone. He's 24. He must have had a tough paper round, because he's just, he'll fight absolutely. I love Ted Cheeseman. I love him. I think he's so tough. And he would never shirk a challenge. You rarely see it. Like when he fought JJ Metcalf, that's a BT fighter. He's gone and fought Troy Williamson. If I'm right in thinking, Troy Williamson's a BT fighter as well.
Yeah, I think JJ Metcalf might now be a matchroom fighter. The only reason I say is because he's fighting on the card as well, isn't he?
I think, and that just fights all comers. He doesn't turn away from a challenge. I think that goes to show his fight against Garcia when he fought for the European title. He did get beat quite, emphatically. It just goes to show he'll jump up levels and he'll fight anyone. And I really hope that we do see Ted Cheeseman fight for the European title again, win it, and then get them big fights at light middleweight. Whether it's somebody like an Erislandy Lara or Tony Harrison, somebody like that, just to say he's fought at that level. I think he's a fighter that deserves it. Sometimes you look at fighters and think they might not have. I think he's got the toughness to move up to them levels. Will he have the skill set to win them fights? But he's got the heart, and I think he's got. I just feel as though he deserves it for what he's done.
You think he gets? Yeah. You think he gets past Troy Williamson?
I do. Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think ever since the Garcia defeat, then he obviously for Conway and Drew, then he fought Fitzgerald and got the defeat. I think he's just got the bit between his teeth where it's like, I've got such a point to prove. The Eggington fight was unbelievable. He's fought so many good fighters. The JJ Metcalf fight, a great victory, because JJ Metcalf's as tough as they come. I think it's going to be very similar to the Metcalf fight. Blood and guts, really, really tough. Troy Williamson's game as they come now. I wouldn't be surprised if Troy Williamson was to. I just can never see Ted Cheeseman getting stopped. I can see him getting beat on points. I just can't see someone stopping him.
I think that's I think if Troy Williamson wins the fight, he's stopping him. So I probably agree, to be honest. I like both fighters though. I like Troy Williamson as well. But yeah, as you say, it's a booming division, isn't it? Especially in the UK. So.
And then you've got obviously Conway and JJ Metcalf as well, both coming off defeats. Conway coming off the defeat on the Canelo undercard where he fought Sissoko, and JJ Metcalf coming off the defeat to Ted Cheeseman. And in boxing, you always kind of look at it and go, well, have a couple of these fights and then maybe make that fight. They've both come off defeats, gone straight in against one another. And I don't know whether that's the money talking. They've both thought, this is an unbelievable deal. Or they've just thought, you know what, let's not have any gimme fights. Let's go in straight away. I think that could be a great fight. Conway Metcalf. They've both are coming off defeats. They've both got points to prove. That could be one of the fights of the night, Conway Metcalf, because they'll just be ferocious. A pair of them.
Yeah, I mean, Metcalf's 33. I mean, I think we kind of forget that he was kind of brought on quite slowly before that Cheeseman fight. But yeah, he probably got a bit of a taste for it against Cheeseman. You can't really blame him for taking on another tricky fight. But yeah, that'll definitely be a good one. Who else?
Coming on so late as well, if it's been put on late, getting the rewards financially, that'll be a good pay for him as well against Conway. And I think when you get such, I think Cheeseman and Metcalf were cheap support on Whyte and Betkin, I think. So you're going to be getting financially paid well. And this will be the same now. I think he's probably thinking big fights, good financial pay as well. Fighters like that deserve it, especially when they're in exciting fights. So, no, I totally agree. And as well, the undercard further down, Peter McGrail from the Olympic setup making his debut as well. He's Liverpoolian, isn't he, Peter McGrail? Yeah, he's making his debut as well,
Interesting debut. Obviously, we're not really going to learn much about him as a pro fighter on Saturday night, but it will be good to see just how impressive he is.
Absolutely. And I think as well, being put on that card, home city, big card to showcase his skills, it's quite exciting for him and as well. Ryland Charlton against Luke Willis. Again, Ryland Charlton, again, I mean, after the Joe Laws fight, you know, he proved that he can bang at that weight. Went in with Marku, you know, outclassed him really. I think Ryland Charlton's exciting. You know, he's always in exciting fights. So I think you always get your money's worth with him. I think that'll be another good fight as well. I think Willis, I think he's from Liverpool, isn't he? I think he's another Liverpool fighter.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. Yeah.
No, quite exciting as well. You've got Shannon Courtney defending her world title. I think the fight that everyone wants to see with Shannon Courtney is the Rachel Ball rematch. Obviously, there's unfinished business there. I know Rachel Ball won form of the world title. I don't think she's fought since, but I think that's a fight that people want to see. Fair play to Shannon Courtney, you know, against 24 Ebony Bridges and got the world title. But yeah, is it Jamie Mitchell? I think she's going in against.
Yeah. That is, I mean, that's the good thing about women's boxing is there might not be the depth, but you do get the good clashes early on. And I think we've also got Natasha Jonas on that card as well. I don't think her opponent's been announced yet. But yeah, and obviously that's the DAZN card. There's obviously a BT Sport card at the same time. Eckerman, Brad Foster. That'll be an interesting card, but we've got to probably be honest. It's probably going to pale into insignificance compared against that Smith Fowler card, and then also what's coming at about 3 o'clock in the morning. How excited are you for Fury Wilder 3?
In all honesty, really, really excited. And I think whenever there's a heavyweight, especially Fury and Joshua and Dillian Whyte, I think Dillian Whyte has that appeal as well. Not as much as Fury and Joshua, but whenever there's a fight week of Fury Joshua, you know about it. And obviously, like, you know, last week with Joshua and Usyk, there's always a big buzz around it. And I don't know, it's just, again, so Fury's so unpredictable. You know, the first fight he boxed, second fight you put it on him and won by stoppage. You just don't know what he's going to do. So that's why I feel as though it is so interesting.
Yeah.
Did it warrant a third fight? Probably not. He beat him so comfortably in the last fight. But, you know, I remember John Fury made a really good point that the American boxing fraternity were so shown up by that they want their opportunity to get the belts back.
Yeah. I mean, obviously rooting for Fury, and I'd say 9 times out of 10 he gets the job done. But a really small part of me is like, well, Wilder knocking him out would sort of serve a pretty good reminder to everyone that we've kind of got used to Fury finding a way, Fury winning, but it would serve a pretty good reminder that heavyweight boxing, anything can happen. I think in some ways we saw that a bit with the Joshua Usyk fight, but that was a 50-50. No one was really that surprised it happened. But I think if Fury lost on Saturday night, that would sort of remind everyone that anything's possible, which I wouldn't want to see it, but it would definitely be some level of excitement.
Absolutely. And I think as well with Wilder there's always that age-old saying, one-trick pony, but it's one hell of a trick in it, that right hand, the power that he has. But I think, in all honesty, Wilder was beaten when Fury got back up in the 12th round. When Fury got back up, like the Undertaker, just saying, yeah, all right, you put me down for 5-6 seconds, but I got back up. You can't beat me. Wilder's never had that before. He puts people down and he just, if they get back up, he leathers them and they don't want to get back up again. Fury got back up and for like the final 30 seconds, he was putting it on Deontay Wilder.
Yeah.
And I just think after that 12th round, I think he thought, oh, he's a madman. And then Fury just looked at it and put it on him in the second fight. How good of a boxer has Deontay Wilder become when did they fight? 2020, February 2020, wasn't it? How much of a good fighter has he become in 18 months? Or how much of a good boxer has he become? Obviously, he got rid of Mark Brayland, a cornerman who cared about him and had empathy for him and sympathy. He's brought him
Malik Scott. Yeah.
Malik Scott. I was going to call him Mikhail Scott. Malik Scott, who really
didn't do much. Yeah.
Didn't do much as a heavyweight.
Yeah.
And obviously, I know he's still going to have JD as in the corner as well. So, the thing with Tyson Fury is he's got the continuity. He's got, Sugar Hill Stewart. He's obviously going to have Andy Lee, I'm assuming, with him as well. So I think people have got to look at the continuity that Tyson Fury's had since the second fight. But you're exactly right, mate. It's still so interesting. If he gets clipped and has one bout of inconsistency or a lack of concentration for a split second, like you say, heavyweight boxing, anything can happen. But I just think Fury's got his number. I think if anyone's going to be scared going into that fight, that third fight, it's got to be Deontay Wilder. Fury's been there, he's done it. But it does make for such interesting view. And I think any trilogy is exciting. But this is the thing. If Wilder wins, it's 1-1-1 then. Do they do a fourth?
You don't want to see it, do you? I mean, well, saying that, if he did win, you probably might want to see it. But yeah, you kind of want to just Fury finish that chapter, and then it's probably Usyk next, isn't it? Really? I mean, it's not going to be Joshua, I don't think. But and that's a fight on paper. That do you think that Fury Usyk is closer than Fury Wilder?
Now, yes.
But is it when I'm saying that, I'm saying, do you think it's a closer fight? Because I think I know Usyk's, possibly the best pound for pound boxer in the world, but I can't see. I mean, Fury's up there, skill, technical wise. Maybe he's not. I wouldn't say he's as good as Usyk, but he is near enough at heavyweight anyway. And then what Usyk doesn't quite. You can't really see Usyk stopping Fury, could you? Whereas Wilder kind of has that option. So you think, in theory, even though Wilder's I don't think it's as hard a fight. I think maybe it's a closer fight.
The one thing about Usyk is I've never seen him rocked, and that's in cruiserweight and heavy. There were moments when he fought Chisora where Chisora put it on him, but he never looked in trouble, really. But he got pushed back onto the ropes a few times, and he had to cover up. It happens in heavyweight boxing. I've never really seen Usyk in real trouble where you're gasping and you think, he's going to go. So if he was to fight Fury, would Fury put it on him, or would it be a chess match? If you go in and have a chess match with Alexander Usyk, you're a brave man, like Joshua showed. Fury might be that technically great, but he could meet his match there. Fury has shown that he can put it on one of the hardest punching heavyweights of all time. So it depends how they go into that fight. Usyk's so unpredictable. It does make for I think Usyk Fury is a really, really close fight. If anyone can beat Usyk, though, it's Tyson Fury. He finds a way of adapting and he just makes it happen and he sticks to it. So I do think he's the one that could beat Usyk. Yeah, definitely. I just think Fury's got that extra couple of inches on Joshua, and and he's got that. I mean, we know Fury's jab. I mean, he would just sit behind that jab all night, and I think he could keep him off him. But yeah, and also I think potentially with Wilder, do we really know how strong his chin is? Have we ever really seen it? I mean, there were moments in the Ortiz fight, probably, the first one that it got tested a touch, but we can't really say definitively whether he's got a proper elite level heavyweight chin. But it's interesting, isn't it? But with Wilder, I think he weathered the storm of Ortiz, and Ortiz has been quite avoided. Left hand, southpaw, Cuban, you can bang. People haven't really ever wanted to say, I'll have that fight. They have avoided him. So fair play to Wilder for taking that fight and beating him twice, by stoppage. I think he weathered the storm well against Ortiz. But Ortiz is 42 now, I think. When you put somebody in against Wilder, who will be ferocious and relentless when they have him rocked, somebody like Dillian Whyte, I think personally, if Dillian Whyte sees you in trouble, he's not going to let you off the hook. He will go for the kill. And that's where it's so dangerous for Whyte. Because if he gets clipped, but that makes for such a good fight. So, I think Wilder, they threw the towel in for a while. Now, obviously, you say about his chin, whether that's really been tested or not. I think he's shown he's got heart because he carried on with that back and he looked exhausted.
Yeah.
It was between the 6th and the 7th round when he went back to the corner after the 6th and came out in the 7th when he got stopped. He just seemed to tire so quickly. That just seemed to knock out of him. And you seen him, he was so lethargic throwing his punches and he just looked exhausted. I think he showed he's got heart. Now, whether he's got the chin, again, if that fight had continued, I do believe Fury would have, he'd have laid him out because that was coming. So I think the best thing his cornerman did was stop it. So you wouldn't see him on the floor, out cold. But I think it's just so good how the heavyweight division's been. We've got such big names now, and Usyk's added himself into that. I think Andy Ruiz is still a player. Then you've got all the fighters teetering on world level: Joseph Parker, Elenius, Kaunaki, Chisora's always in exciting fights. The heavyweight division is booming at the moment. But yeah, really excited about that. It's just how it goes. I thought Fury would win on points in the second fight. He goes and stops him. So it's just exciting to see how that fight plays out. Personally, I think Fury finds another way. And I think Wilder will have success early, and I think he might clip him. Whether he puts him down or not, I think there'll be moments where it's sticky. But if Wilder's going to go in there and box clever and utilise his right hand well, we saw it with Anthony Joshua against Usyk when you tire, because that is not your regular way of fighting. You go in there and try and knock the spark out. Can he keep that up for 12 rounds? So it's just how that fight goes. I personally think Fury finds a way to stop him again. I just don't know when it'll be. So
yeah. I could see
the undercard as well. Got a good undercard, to be fair.
Oh yeah, it's it could be. Well, I was going to say it could be on pretty early because you've got a lot of heavy-handed heavyweights on the undercard, don't you? But
yeah,
I mean, yeah.
Helenius Kaunaki rematch. Frank Sanchez against F.A. Jarba, yeah, two good heavyweight fights there. And I think that's one good thing. I mean, the first fight, I watched that with my brothers, and yeah, the undercard was non-existent pretty much. The second fight, Charles Martin fought on the undercard. Can't remember who it was he fought.
He wasn't fighting Kaunaki, was he?
No. Charles Martin, I'm certain, was on the undercard because he come out with that crown again. King Charles Martin, I'm certain he fought on the undercard. So yeah, I think they've looked at that and thought, well, let's stick a good undercard on as well. But again, it's that you see so many things flying around on social media, don't you? Whether it's is it sold well? Is it? And it makes you think Fury's got quite adoring fans. And when he fought in the second fight, I'd say 85% of the fans were there for him. And whether they were Americans, whether they were traveling Brits. So this time round, whether Brits aren't flying because of the pandemic or restrictions, it makes you wonder: has it sold well? Does it have interest in the US? I think they've got like 1,000 tickets left to sell or something, which I think they will sell on fight week. But it's the demand of that fight whether people are interested. But they're too. Wilder's such a heavy hitter. Fury's so unpredictable. I still think it's interesting. I still think it's massively interesting, to be fair. And it is one I'm excited about. What time does it start? It's about 4 or 5 in the morning.
Well, it must be, isn't it? In Vegas. Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I think it was, what was it? It was about 5:30 last time, second fight. You're going to be getting up? You're going to be paying BT Sport box office?
Yeah, I'll be up for that one, mate. I will. I just like the comeback of Tyson Fury just all encapsulated me, to be honest. And being out for 18 months, beating Klitschko, somebody who'd not been defeated in 11 years, people can say whatever they want about that win. Fury was outstanding that night. And then obviously having 18 months off, the issues that he had, mental health, depression, substance abuse, ballooning up to 28 stone. You look at him, you think you're never going to fight again. And then having 2 warm-up matches against Sefer Seferi and Francesco Pianetta to prepare you for Deontay Wilder. winning that first fight, people can, on paper, yeah, he drew. I had it 115, 111 to Fury. I gave Wilder 3 rounds.
Yeah.
The 2 knockdown rounds, I gave him round 2 because he was a little bit busier. Obviously, didn't go his way. It was a draw. He then went back, got back up from that punch, which was just so iconic. And then stopping one of the hardest hitting punchers at heavyweight, you know, of all time. And then having the third fight with him. I just think it's such an amazing story. And that's why I like to be along, you know, for the ride for it. You know, I think he's done so well to get back into where he is. And just hope he wins. And then I think the fight that you'll see next won't be Fury Usyk. So obviously you're going to see Joshua Usyk rematch. I think you're more likely to see Fury Dillian Whyte.
Yeah.
Which again, brilliant fight.
Oh, that's a great fight. I was going to say you might see Whyte Wilder, but yeah, no, I get you completely. And do you think that's, I mean, Fury said he's got 2-3 fights left. Do you think that's one of the 2 or 3?
Yeah, I think, well, he come out, didn't he, and said, right, I think it was 5 fights. So it was the Wilder, Dillian Whyte, Joshua rematch, and his old mate Del Boy. And he's always said he'll do the trilogy with Chisora. And I wouldn't have a problem with that, because it's just like icing on the cake.
It'd be fun. It'd be like a tribute act, wouldn't it? At the end of the
because they fought before. And, you know, I think they're good pals, aren't they? So I wouldn't have it. Just to finish on that. Yeah. They'll both make a load of money.
It would sell. It would sell big. If that was his last fight, people knew it was his last fight. I think you could sell. I'm going to say something stupid here. I think you could sell out Wembley Stadium just as like basic. If you got a good undercut, well, actually no, it wouldn't make a difference with it. But you could sell it out just as a like let's all worship Tyson Fury night. But,
I do, like you said, I think it's a fun fight, isn't it? And again, like I think he said something like, "I'll give Del Boy one last chance to fight for the world titles," you know, and that'd be his final fight. Probably be Del Boy's final fight as well. I think that's why she's always still, you know, going as well as he is. But personally, I think there has to come a point. Obviously, if Dillian Whyte beats Otto Wallin, I know Fury said I'll fight Whyte in December. Well, obviously you've got Whyte fighting at the end of this month. Is that enough turnaround to fight in December? I don't think so. So I think an ideal time, the WBC have got to say, you are mandatory now. You are getting your opportunity. You are fighting the winner of Fury Wilder 3. No more rematches. You've got to have your opportunity, especially if you beat Otto Wallin. So I think that is a fight you'll see next. It depends what channel you see that on. I mean, I think Dillian Whyte has a fight-by-fight deal with Eddie Hearn and DAZN, so whether he'd do that on BT, I don't know what Fury's situation with BT is. Obviously, it's going to be whoever pays the most, but I think that'll be the one you'd see next, but again, I just want to see them all fight. I want to see Whyte Fury. I want to see Whyte Wilder. I want to see Wilder Joshua. I just hope they all fight one another. That is one thing I really, really hope for. And yeah, but that'll be the one. But they're the ones. Dillian Whyte, Fury, then Joshua, Wilder next, Whyte, Joshua, and then Chisora. But I just want to see Whyte get his opportunity. I think again he deserves it. He's been in that mandatory position for a while, and that's when it's become a problem when you don't get that opportunity, isn't it? So
yeah, as a fan, I'm not sure who I'm not as in who I'm picking to win, but who I'd want to win. Whyte, Fury. I mean, I'm a massive Whyte fan myself, to be honest, but yeah, that'd be a huge fight. I think actually, in a way, to a lot of boxing fans, they would prefer to see Whyte Fury than they would Fury Joshua.
Probably, yeah. I think Whyte's so exciting with that left, with that left hook, and he can bang, and the build up for that fight would be unreal. Fury and Whyte just going at it for fight quality. It'd be great to see. I think it does have an interesting appeal. Again, I think Fury's, he can adapt to any fight. He can adapt to any situation. I think he would win that fight. We've seen that Whyte can be stopped twice. So I think Fury might have confidence in that. I think he beat Whyte. I like Dillian Whyte as well. But I just think Fury's that good. He moves like a middleweight, he can bang, and he adapts. But I just want to see them all fight. And I think here's one, George, for you. If, let's say, Fury is beating Klitschko after no one touched him for 11 years, He's beaten Wilder, arguably twice, but he's never been defeated by Wilder. If he beats him in the third fight, and then he goes on and fights Joshua and Whyte, I don't think he'd fight Usyk. I just can't see Fury Usyk ever happening. But if he fought them fights and won, is there the argument? I personally think there is, that he's one of the greatest heavyweights of all time.
The only reason I think my view in that metric, and I'm not sure whether it's like a fair one to have, but I just don't think you can, even with those fights, and don't get me wrong, I think they're all great wins, massive wins in our era, but I just don't think that you can rank them against, you know, that golden age unless they all fight each other. Which, I suppose they have in that respect. But if he doesn't fight Usyk, he doesn't do that last little dance, then I think, yeah, obviously he's in the equation, isn't he? Is he number one? I don't know. What do you reckon, Greg?
I mean, yeah, I think there's an argument to say, if he, like you say, like we said, if he goes on and if he fights Joshua twice and beats him twice, fights Whyte and Usyk, and then has his last dance against Hellboy, he's fought everybody there is to fight. I personally feel as though there's an argument. I think he'd overtake somebody like Mike Tyson. I think he would be in the same realms there. Whether I say he's the best of all time, I don't know, but I would, if he does all that, then I don't think there's any argument to say he deserves to have a seat at their table, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And he deserves to be in that company of Lennox Lewis, of Muhammad Ali, of Joe Frazier, of I think he'd be higher up than Vladimir Klitschko because he beat him. So, and it's where you rank Vladimir Klitschko then, isn't it? So I think so. Yeah, I think he's got a claim then for saying he has a seat at that table. Whether you could say he's the best of all time to do it, that's another conversation after 10 pints, isn't it? But,
yeah, it might end up on the street with a couple of fists, I reckon.
Exactly, yeah. So I think he has the right to be in that company. And I think he has a right to have a seat at that table to say, I'm part of this select group of heavyweights. It is so hard to say who's the best of all time, isn't it? So I think he'd be deserving to be in that argument. That's my view on it. Yeah.
Well, we'll have that question another time. Let's revisit that one. Obviously, we'll be seeing all those shows on Saturday night. I don't think we'll be sleeping for a couple of days, to be honest. But we've got Smith Fowler, Fury Wilder 3, and then obviously the BT Sport card. So this has been our inaugural BBTV podcast. Thanks for everyone joining us today, and have a great night of boxing on Saturday night. Take care, lads.